I really like the direction that Pokemon TCG Pocket is headed in right now, and that is because of the fact, not in spite of the fact, that I'm a free-to-play player. I want to talk about why that is and how I think that the general game design philosophy here is making sure to cater to not only the big spenders, not only the small spenders, but even the free-to-play players, and keeping the game fun and accessible to everyone. So without further ado, here's what the video is going to look like. First of all, I want to talk about not the newest set, not SpaceTime Smackdown, but we're going to start with talking about Mythical Island. And then we're going to get into the mystery of why I didn't capitalize Mythical Island right there. Actually, no, we're going to talk about SpaceTime Smackdown and how it's designed a little bit differently, and how both of these sets tried to accomplish different things and did so in different ways and handle it for different players. From there, I want to talk about some examples of exactly how this works and what I mean. And then, I don't know, we're going to have some kind of great revelation and all become better people who subscribe to the channel. Okay, first thing is first, we gotta talk about Mythical Island. The first expansion added a mini set that only had about 86 cards in it. Now, there were some common cards in this that had significant impact on the meta. And when I say common cards, I mean 1 or 2 diamond. Leaf definitely changed sort of the viability of higher retreat cost cards, and Druddigon, more than anything, really affected just the way the game was played, the pace, how decks are set up, what stalling or getting time to get your Pokemon online looks like. I honestly think that this card was a mistake. I don't think they knew how good it was, but they did give it to us. It may have been the most influential card in the entire set. It definitely showed up in plenty of decks, and you had to be able to deal with it. It really changed how the game was played, but a lot of the other common cards either had very niche cases or were really only relevant to 1 or 2 decks at most. Like, think about Pokemon Flute or whatever that card is called. Really only works with Pidgeot EX, which didn't really get a foothold in the meta, or Budding Expeditioner. Great card, but you have to have Mew or it does nothing. The common cards in this set were not necessarily game-changing for most decks, most people, most of the time. But I would say that the EX cards in this set actually did kind of change everything, which was very much what was needed at that point, right? The meta revolved almost completely around Mewtwo EX and Pikachu EX, and we needed some new things introduced to give other options and break up the meta. Now, I would say that Celebi, Mew, Gyarados, and even Aerodactyl all had pretty significant meta contributions. Sorry to all the Pidgeot fans, but it's simply not the way yet. It could always come back. I think there were decks and strategies and tournament winnings that I think used all of these to great effect, and it really did a good job of breaking up the monotony, perhaps, that the early Genetic Apex meta had. But I think that this kind of makes sense for a set like this, because when it is so small and we're getting 2 free packs every day, the rarer cards, the EX cards, because mechanically, right, everything rarer than an EX card is just aesthetic. You have access to every text of a card in the game at 4 diamonds or lower, but the 4 diamonds are then necessarily the most rare cards to get a hold of. So here, the rarest cards are the most important ones, but when there's only 5 of them to get and you have 2 packs a day for at least a month and a half to try and get them, it's more attainable than it sounds. Even if you want all of them up front, you can pay to get that if you want to, but you can also sit back and enjoy the game and just build them up over time. You get some lucky wonder picks, lucky packs. There's enough time to get it done, and I think it really makes sense that this smaller set was designed this way, because it both addressed the metagame of the actual card playing, but also addressed the experience of playing the game for different kinds of players. It gave free-to-play players a chance to get their hands on everything or close to it because of the timescale that the set happened on. Now, let's talk about the next one, SpaceTime Smackdown, WWE Raw Pokemon. What we have here is a set that is designed pretty differently. There were some EX cards here that definitely did affect the meta significantly. Mostly just this one. Can't get around the fact that this one is dominating the game right now, and Magnezone too, despite not being an EX card, but still being sort of a rare Pokemon that's a little bit tricky to get your hands on. I would say that the common cards in this set actually had a way bigger effect. I mean, think about it. We have something like Pokemon Communications, which single-handedly makes Stage 2 evolutions feel viable and not like you're just getting lapped by the decks based on basic Pokemon. Again, Pikachu, Mewtwo, Celebi. Basic Pokemon have had an advantage. Pokemon Communications helps to mitigate that without completely erasing the way that's meant to be balanced, which I think is great. Or there's, hey, Pokemon Tools. I'm sure you've seen this one. Druddigon was impactful, now everything's Druddigon, and Druddigon is Super Druddigon. Cards like Rocky Helmet and Giant Cape completely change the math and rhythm of the game for every deck in every matchup in ways that I think are really fun and make the game more complex and enjoyable and add some longevity to it. One thing that's really great about cards like these is that they fit into every deck, even the old ones you already have built. And what I really love about this set is that by focusing on these common cards that have very wide applications, even if you don't get all the new cards right away as a free-to-play player, they breathe new life into the old decks that you liked and still keep the game fun and exciting to keep logging into and playing matches. And I think a really great example of this is in terms of how many new of these common support cards deal with controlling energy differently instead of just getting to play one a turn. Before this we had some stuff like Moltres and Misty, but I think that when we have cards like Manaphy and Dawn, it just opens up so much more space, right? Like, it is so much better to be dealing with the guaranteed energy of Manaphy than at the mercy of Misty's absolute degeneracy. And I'm talking about common cards, but even something rare like Dialga, again, gives us this guaranteed consistent ramp in a way that we hadn't really seen before, and even makes something like Charizard EX a little bit more playable. It's very cool. And I do also just want to talk about Volkner, because you might think this is contrary to my thesis of cards that help old decks become more relevant, but if you think about it, this is the first card that lets you repurpose energy from the discard pile. It lets you get 2 electric energy. What is something that doesn't have the most HP and uses 2 electric energy? It's Pikachu EX. If you can get copies of Electivire or Luxray, which is a little easier now that Electivire is a promo, you can repurpose the energy off Pikachu after it goes down into a card that is even stronger like Electivire. It's really cool, and it just shows that they are specifically designing a bigger set with more cards to be more welcoming to free-to-play players, even if we can't get all of the rare cards immediately or at all, because getting 2 copies each of 10 EX cards is a pretty tall order. But I'm still having fun playing other decks. Now, I want to talk about 2 more cards that you might think I forgot. I didn't. They're right here. We're going to do this real quick. That's why it's a lightning round. So number 1 is a card that I think a lot of people would say is the strongest card in this set. You know him. You might hate him. It's Cyrus. This is a 2-star art. It's available as a 2-diamond card also. Very common. You will get it if you just keep pulling packs. Actually, I still don't have Rocky Helmet, but I'm sure it's coming eventually. They can't evade us forever. So Cyrus is a game winner. This card wins games. You can drag a damaged Pokemon off the bench and guarantee the KO for your last point in many cases. It is pretty devastating, and there isn't a whole lot of counterplay other than specifically playing around this potential at every point of the game and being very careful about what Pokemon you have, what HP they have or don't have, and so on. There's not a whole lot of counterplay to it, except there is kind of one card that I have used, and that card is Mars, who again, 2-star art here, available as a 2-diamond. And you might be thinking, this is absurd, but in a situation where your opponent can win the game in that one play, they often only need 1 more point, and if they need 1 point, you play Mars, it reduces their hand down to 1 card. In most cases, that 1 card is not going to be Cyrus, so you can buy some time, or maybe just buy yourself the 1 turn you might need to play your own Cyrus or do your own game-finishing move. And what I love about this and what it represents is that in a lot of gacha games, both of these would be rare and hard to get to inspire people to spend on the game. Or perhaps Cyrus would be free for everyone and whatever counter there is to it would be paid, or the opposite. In this case, they made both of these cards 2 diamonds available to everyone, and I just really like the design precedent that sets. It shows that they care about the game being accessible to not only the whales, not only the spenders, but to everyone who might pick up and play it because it's fun to open a couple Pokemon packs every day. That's kind of why I'm here, and I fall in love with the game, and stuff like this makes me think that it actually is a pretty decent time investment. So speaking of balance, check this out. Not exactly balanced, right? But what if it was? Imagine perhaps if this video is pushing the right buttons for you, maybe you could take a lesson from that and make it look like this instead. You might say, but Levin, that's not balanced either. And great eyes, you're very perceptive, you're right. But over time, if it looked like this for a while, the averages would eventually come to a point of balance. And I think that would be beautiful. So, thank you for indulging me. Let's move on to some examples. You know what my favorite deck is in the game? Has been and will be Charizard EX. There's just something so fun about bringing out the big guy who feels pretty unstoppable. Now, The common cards make this deck feel better than it ever has. Pokemon Communication is going to come up a lot in this section. It makes the Stage 2 so much more viable to get online. It makes it feel so much better to only have Moltres and the Charizard line as your cards in the deck. And having Moltres out there is a little bit more effective thanks to Leaf and Dawn, because now if you don't have quite the flips you need, you can still cheese some extra energy onto Charizard by moving it off Moltres. It feels amazing. You can buy an extra turn if you don't get the big flips right away, get the energy on Charizard to drop 2 Crimson Storms that usually wins the game. And you can throw a helmet on the bird. Make it a little better of a staller, make it a little bit, add a little bit of chip damage to the equation so that maybe you can get rid of the slash somewhere instead of a Crimson Storm, save some energy that way. It's just more flexible, more options, feels better to play, and now that Giant Cape, another tool, is so everywhere in the meta, Charizard doing 200 damage matters more than ever because 150 doesn't get the job done like it used to. A lot of stuff now goes to 160, 170, 180 HP if they put a cape on it. Charizard still one-shots, I think, everything in the game, even wearing a cape, so it's no longer overkill, it's no longer an overinvestment, it's actually now just really nice, very convenient, very fun. Okay, next up, it's the Big Turtle. It's the counterpart to Charizard. It's my other favorite deck. It's Blastoise EX. Now, this one is very similar, but Rocky Helmet I think does even more because you need a little bit more time to set this up on the bench. It's a little bit less consistent in terms of, you know, Moltres has a higher average energy drop than Misty does. So having Rocky Helmet on a Druddigon or whatever else you have in position to stall does a great job of giving you that time to get Blastoise online with 5 energy. And again, Pokemon Communications means you might actually get Blastoise online in the time that you can stall. If you need energy and Misty's not doing it for you, Dawn and Manaphy is a great combo that can just produce a huge amount of energy on the board and get Blastoise ready just in the nick of time to win the game for you. And again, the Cape meta means that doing more than 150 damage matters. Hitting for 160 or 170 with Giovanni can be the difference between, you know, KOing a Togekiss, a Mewtwo, a Darkrai, or not, and that is going to decide a lot of games. And you know, you can even throw the cape on the turtle itself, and with 200 HP and putting out at least 160 every turn, it's just not trivial to deal with this thing. When it hits the board, it is going to decide the game one way or another. And it's very fun to play. It's never felt as good as it does right now, thanks to these new, mostly common cards. Entirely common cards, in fact, that I'm talking about. And finally, it's another water Pokemon. You know it, you might hate it. It's Articuno EX and Friends. Because, look, this has a reputation for being the 18 trainer card, getting the turn 1 Misty to just win the game with no counterplay on the first turn. But I like it so much better now because bench damage matters more than ever thanks to Cyrus. You can Blizzard them, and the 10 chip damage to the bench is less of an afterthought, and honestly something that drives the game, instills terror, and sets up big KOs on whatever they're trying to set up by dragging it out and hitting it with another Blizzard straight up. 90 damage total takes out a lot of basic and Stage 1 Pokemon. And you know what? If you need more than that, well, you can play it with Greninja for a little bit more bench damage or damage wherever you need it thanks to Water Shuriken, and it's so much easier to get Greninja out with, that's right, Pokemon Communications. It might be the best card in this set. This even makes it more playable to not have 2 copies of every card in the Greninja line. It's a little bit easier to get around that way. You can test it, you can feel it out, but Pokemon Comms does big things here. And again, Manaphy and Dawn, Misty can reduce the game to absolute degeneracy. She's an agent of chaos. She's not on your team. She's usually playing against you whether you play her or the opponent does. Having something more reliable like Manaphy and Dawn just makes it feel better, makes it a little bit more consistent, and even makes it easier to set up 2 Articunos at once. So it's more consistent than it's ever been, and you know what? I've been talking about common cards, but let's just consider Palkia EX also. Slots very nicely into this kind of deck. It's basically the sequel to Articuno. It's Articuno 2. It's Articdose, if you will. Okay, yeah, I always liked playing this deck. It always felt like a little bit of a meme, and it might still be, but it feels better than ever. So basically, I think the common cards are really making these old decks that I liked feel relevant still, maybe feel better than ever, maybe even feel like meta impactful in a way that I didn't think they ever would again. So that's what I have for you. Thank you so much for watching to the end, and subscribing if you felt so inspired. I really would appreciate it. I'm currently in a legal battle with Levin Seti, different guy. I know we might look and sound similar, but I want to get the rights to the name, and I could really use the ad money from YouTube to pay those legal bills. So, okay, if you had a good time, or if you didn't, let me know what you think of the new expansion. Am I totally off base? Is it actually awful and making you quit as a free-to-play player, or is it making things better? I want to know what you think, and I want to know generally what you think about the state of the game, because I know trading was a damper for a lot of people, but I think the game as it was is still heading in a good direction, even if trading isn't the perfect thing that a lot of people were expecting or hoping for. And if you don't like those prompts, just give me a hot take about Pokemon TCG Pocket. I want to make a video like that someday. Maybe you could be in it if you do. Haven't gotten enough material for it yet. We'll see what happens, but one way or another, more stuff is coming. I can't tell you exactly what it is yet because not even I know, but if this was cool, that will be too, because I just have it like that. Alright, I'm gonna end this now so I can get to work on whatever comes next, but thank you so much for being here, and until then.